Welcome to the Catholic Dadcast by Rich Pintang, where we break down all things dad from a Catholic perspective. Now more than ever, we need dads to step up their game. Gentlemen, buckle up and get ready for battle. All right, welcome to the Catholic Dadcast. I am Rich Pintang, your host and founder. We are on episode number 3, and I got a nice doozy for all of you. We've been really contemplating and praying about the type of subject material you guys would want to hear and get value from. And I was fortunate to book some time with a close friend of mine who is a great person in our community, truly the hands and feet of Christ, and actively always looking to serve God in some way and somehow. He is 20 plus years of success at the corporate level with Dryers Nestle, graciously served 8 years as director of youth ministry, grew up in a family of 6 kids. That's right, count it, 6 kids.
Mm-hmm.
Happily married to Marianne for 21 years, 4 beautiful children, 3 dogs, and a partridge in a pear tree.
Mm-hmm.
Please welcome Mike Fahey to the show. Welcome,
Thank
Mike.
you, Rich. Thanks for all the kind words.
I tell you, man, I've run across, I've crossed your paths through the years so many times, and I felt like when I wanted to have this conversation with you, I felt like it was perfect because I think there's certain families and certain individuals, especially on the dad side, that I feel like they get it, and you're one of them. So I'm glad you are brave enough to come to the studio and share your story. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I hope I get it. I try.
It's your story, and I, and quite frankly, I never really had a chance to really take a deep dive into your journey into adoption. And quite frankly, there have been times where I've had conversations with those that have said that they've considered it, but like I was saying, here's the time where we really can take a deep dive into it. And I know that there are going to be potential listeners that themselves have thought about it. But as far as your Catholicism, Mike,
Mm-hmm.
Walk me through that. Are you a cradle Catholic like myself?
I am. Yes. No, I grew up, my very, very, very active Catholic family. So my parents, we grew up in Covina, California, and
The rugged streets of Covina.
Yeah, well, not too far. I haven't strayed too far from the area, but yeah, my grandparents actually helped to build the church in there, so they were part of that whole project. And I grew up. My parents were, they were my mom taught CCD. I went to the Catholic school there. My dad taught confirmation. They were active with the fiesta. They were hosting gatherings. We had I was just talking about this with some people last night. There was a traveling Mary, that statue. And so you would get on the list and they would bring Mary to your house and she'd be there for a week. I think if it was a week, and we would pray the rosary as a family together. So I grew up with that. And I grew up, as we left for vacations, my parents were big on camping, probably the most least expensive activity we could do. But we would start the trip every time with the rosary. I'm not sure they did that to put us to sleep, because I always just kind of automatically fell asleep. But yeah, so I grew up. That was part of the community that we knew, and it was helping out. And for me, growing up, it was more of just kind of a social thing where we were. My parents had a big yard, so they would host different events. and I went to Sacred Heart School in Covina, and then I went to Damien High School in Laverne, and then I went to University of San Diego. So I, many years of Catholic school education, and all that kind of falls along with that.
Yeah, you can look back at that and understand that that is more than your average lukewarm Catholic, and that to me exemplifies what I believe is really important is the Catholic lifestyle. Um, and it cracks me up, Mike, because I recall being that kid falling asleep during the rosary. I wasn't, excited to have Mama Mary arrive at my house. It was me and three other brothers,
Mm-hmm.
um, kind of dreading that. Oh, we have to sit here with auntie and mom and dad, and it was never truly explained to us the value of
Right.
coming together. Nevertheless, you probably heard it too, but you hear that the sons are we're all griping about how long is this and this or that, but then it still resonates with me. I can still hear my mom saying, the family that prays together stays together. And fast forward to 20 years of marriage and then 15 years of parenthood for myself. It really does stick. And God bless your parents for doing that. And and they're 90 plus, right? 93.
Yeah, they're both 93 this year.
Amazing. Praise
Yeah.
God. And that really goes to show you that it really does, the fruit doesn't fall too far from the tree. I'd like to say that that's a testimony right there. So you were always a Southern California boy,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Oh yeah.
but you met Marianne in Utah, married in '99, correct?
Yes.
Married in '99, and and I think that was when you you took the deep dive in the sacrament of matrimony, and then from that point, um, talk about how your parenting skills developed and evolved as you guys planned a family.
Oh geez. They don't develop to actually till the kid's actually there. um, I think we were we weren't young, but we were kind of in the middle, um, and it was I think it was more of the kind of the natural um, next step where you wanted to be parents together and have a family. Um, and so uh, my parenting skills pre children, it was more the honeydew role. So you got to get the room ready. There's the painting, and there's getting the furniture and putting it together, and all that. So I don't, my I guess we're all kind of a product of our parents, how we grew up, and their parenting. Um, and so my probably resource that I drew from was, my parents were, my dad worked hard. He was in the grocery business. Um, and my mom was at home, she was managing the house and the kids and the schedules. And I remember going grocery shopping with her, and she'd have like 3 baskets lined up because she would plan out meals for 2 weeks. But and it was very independent. I mean, um, we were very independent. They kind of raised us that way. So very different style of parenting from other people. But everybody's got their own style they go to, and I think a lot of times you fall back on what you're more familiar with.
Yeah, I hear you. In fact, um, conversely, in our household, it was my mom that was the breadwinner, being a nurse,
Oh,
immigrating to Chicago because of the high need for nurses here in the United States. And so it became, we were fortunate that um, my dad working different jobs and then having my aunt in the household as somewhat the the maternal presence in the home. But in your household, was your mom or your dad the faith leader in the house, or was it both?
It was both. It was both. But they were both very much a team in everything we did. Um, they both sang loud at church, and they needed singing lessons, but they sang loud. Um, but they both it was both led in prayer. It was never. I can't recall it ever being feeling like one was stronger than the other. Um, and you find things out over the years too. Like I found out, later, when I was, much older, that my dad every morning, once he retired, he still wakes up early, um, and he'll sit there and he does his rosary and his prayers every morning. So it's these things. Sometimes it's the things that you may not have been aware of at the time, but there is that sense that it was very important to him. And he would share stories. Like my dad would share stories with Vance. He was in the executives when they were going to be doing layoffs or doing things that they had to do, and he struggled with that. So he would go to the parish priest and really talk about, am I doing the right thing here? Is this okay? So it wasn't just this, like we need, here's the money and here's the budget. We got to do this. He was like, no, he was worried about the people, and that was important to him. And so I got that message loud and clear. And my mom, I remember growing up back when they had the women's group would clean the church. So I'd be at the church where they're all dusting and wiping things down. And I don't know if I helped, but I remember running around the altar and stuff. That's back when they had the altar rail. And I remember she had the group where they would meet and do the rosary in the morning, and then they just kind of hang out and kind of chat after that. But I remember kind of just doing that. So it was more they each led in their own way, um, and it was very obvious that was part of their life.
With 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 parenting, we it's funny because I always make the joke that we're never number one, we're never ready. You're never going to be ready. And
Yes.
then number two, for whatever reason, the parenting manual never arrives in the mail, and you just go and you head home. And so, I mean, if you were to describe how your how you guys started your family, it was very rough. I mean, take us through the starting a family and how that was. It wasn't all cotton candy and balloons.
Oh yeah, no, no. I think if they ever do develop a parenting starter box, part of it should be coffee. Include coffee. Um, I always told I was when I was a little bit older and had kids and I had employees when I worked at Dryers. I managed a sales team, and they would start having their families, and I'd say you never really discover how little sleep you can live on until you have kids. But so ours was, so we were married in 99, March of 99. My wife tried to make it easy, so she made it was 3699. So it's very easy for me to remember that. So haven't forgotten it yet, as far as I know, anyway. But and we found out that I should have. I don't have my note, so I've got notes on this too. We found we were, but she was pregnant, not we. She was pregnant um, in the fall, and um, so we had been, and it's amazing, we had been looking for a house because we were in a condo. We when we got married, I moved into her condo. We were over in Orange, um, and so we were looking for a house, and it's funny, I just the way I found my agent at that time was I looked online and I just pulled his name out. He turned out to be a great agent for us. He was Hal. He's long since passed, but and he was patient. He worked with us a lot. We looked at a lot of houses, and um, we we found one. It was like the perfect house. It was on a cul-de-sac, so it had a large yard. Um, we're not too close to to the freeway, but we are kind of close to railroad tracks. Um, but the key, the real key was the cul-de-sac, so not a lot of through traffic, and I like the yard. That's my thing. And so we moved in, and um, I remember my wife. We had a appointment, and I was at that time I was a salesman for dryers, so my route was in Orange County, and I got a call from her that she had gotten a call from the doctor, and there was something that was something wrong. They had complications, and I can still remember I raced home, and I got here, and at that time in the back, I think the previous owners had a swing set for their kids, and uh, I can just remember her. She was just sitting on one of the swings, just kind of like like the lost child, um, just her head down and just sad, and that kind of started a journey where it was we were we weren't sure what was going to happen because things weren't going right. Um, they said I got very good at interpreting ultrasounds. I got better than the text sometimes. We were in that often, and they her so she was the when the baby's in the womb. They're surrounded by fluid, and the fluid was very low, and the babies they said his measurements are he's because they do all the measurements so they kind of know where they should be at certain times, and they say well he's behind, and they say oh yeah it's a boy, um, and it's just all these things are it's just below, and it's just in the fluid, and they couldn't tell us why. They didn't know why. They couldn't figure it out. So we were going and monitoring. And the one thing though that was above average was the head. So it was a Fahey head. That was the above average growth. But and it was we were so we're in a new house, and we get this news, and we're dealing with this situation, and we're still planning. So we're still getting the room ready. My wife, she painted on the walls, just some nice just stuff, and had like the stickers, and you got you're building everything, and just kind of getting ready for when the baby comes home. They've got that place as that, I guess, as that nesting instinct, that kind of kicks in. Um, and it was so that was in 2020, and on she started getting the labor contractions, and so we would rush down to the hospital, and then they kind of get it kind of calm down, and we'd go back home, and we just gotten home from being in the hospital, and it seems it always happens like 10 o'clock at night or 9:30 at night. And so at that time we were going to UCI, so over there off at Chapman. And we got back, and I'm in the den, and my wife had just come to lay on the bed, and all of a sudden I hear a scream from her, and she's in the bathroom, and she says, "Honey, the baby's coming out." So it's like I call the hospital. I say, "We're coming in." I forgot to tell them who I was. I just said, baby's coming early. We're coming in now. And we hopped in the car, and must have had angels, because the way I was driving, it's amazing that nothing happened in the drive. And I remember going there, and we get in within, I exit Chapman, I go right, and we're within probably a quarter mile of the hospital, and they're doing road construction, and there's a detour. And it's like, oh, so just race around. And this is about at this point, I think this is like right around midnight is what it is. So not a lot of cars to begin with, but um, I remember just parking the car in the emergency lane there, um, and they come out and wheel her up, and we get up there, and uh, we're in the room, and the kind of the staff comes in, and then one of the doctors, I think she was like in training maybe, but she was a doctor. Um, all of a sudden, she had this kind of this gas. She goes, oh, "It's Mrs. Fahey," So it's like, it's not great, and it was June 13th, and the baby was born, and they said, do you want us? Um, do you is it what do you want us to do? Because there's when you're at these early stages, they talk to you about what do you want, how far are you willing to go to save the baby, um, and they have to, because the baby's so small, just to get a breathing tube in, they have to do some damage to the jaw, because it's even though it's a small little tube, it's still too big for them to get in.
How early was the birth?
Oh, you're gonna ask me those questions. I knew you would. I should have. So this was in June. I want to say it was before 20 weeks.
Hmm. Very, very
So we, we
premature.
we hadn't reached. I believe 20 weeks is when the lungs develop, and that's a key piece. And it was before that. So and then they said, then they couldn't save the baby. Um,
Hmm.
and I can remember my wife. They brought the baby to my wife, and baby's wrapped up in like the blanket. My wife's just kind of holding her, and they said, what are you going to name her?" And we were like, "Wait a minute, we've been this whole time. You've been telling us it's a boy. We picked out Logan. That was our name." And we said, "Can you double check?" And they said, "Okay." And they said, "No, it's a girl." And uh, I can remember just how easily the name Lauren came to my wife's lips. She said her name is Lauren, and I just knew that that was right. Um, and so my wife's just, she has Lauren in her arms, and she's just kind of trying to bring some order to her hair, her hair, and and then they eventually, they take her away, and the nurse there did a baptism for us, because you can do that in emergency situations, and we're just in the recovery room. Um, and it's tough because everybody, you're in the section of the hospital where people are there after they've had their babies, and you know that. Um, and I remember that, just sitting there, you're just in shock. And I made a few phone calls to family, um, and then they show up with this envelope, and I'm thinking, okay, cool, it's something, it's stuff I got to sign, I got to fill out. I can focus on this, and the first thing I pull out is the blanket she was wrapped in. Um, so it's just very, it's hard, and it's very emotional, and um, you go home, and you were expecting to come home with a baby, and you don't.
Yeah, what
Um,
it reminds me of is how quickly things can change, especially like at these times. We always think we've got things under control. We think we have our priorities in order, and then you can reflect back on this experience and realize, I can just tell that the range of emotions from the challenge and the complications to, me picturing Marianne holding Lauren and um, trying to, understand how this was all happening. I can imagine that it was the path after that was even more so a sense of like hopelessness, like why us?
mhm.
But and at the same time, you look at it as, how am I going to look at this as a blessing at all? You know, when we feel like we're deserving to be parents, and we how did we wrong you? I'm sure you guys had to question God at some point there, um, and how to redeem yourself and cling on to your faith.
It was, yeah, we did. I mean, I've always had a gift where I've never questioned God's presence. Um, and someone called that a gift one time, and said I've never doubted. Um, and and my approach has always been that um, he doesn't he doesn't do these things don't happen because he wills it to happen. Um, because he lets it's the whole free choice where he lets things happen. He puts things in motion and he lets things happen. Whether it's life decisions, however, um, but he always provides people around you to help you heal and to find your way again. And it was, there was times when there would be a why, just why is this happening? Um, Wanting to understand, wanting to put a reason behind it. And then let me order this. It can't just happen randomly. But they never could tell us why Marianne's pregnancy was like that. The doctors never could tell us. Um, and so we were still, that was June, and we had moved into our house in April. So we were still new to the area. Um, and we started, before that, we really weren't going to church. Um, I went to University of San Diego, and I was next door to the church, and I think I went maybe once or twice when I was there. So it was something that I didn't actively engage myself in. But we started going back to church, and we tried uh, one church, St. Martin's, that's near us, and we went to like one of the morning masses when they do dismissal of the kids, and we both had to leave when they did that. It was just like, it hit everything. Mm. And then we went to San Antonio, which is near us, and my wife, I think because her parents have moved there, so I think she'd been there before when she was younger, and it just felt like home for us. And it was, I want to say, within the first month, where the youth minister at the time came up and was asking for people to help with youth ministry. And I thought I was like, I was kind of drawn to it, but I wasn't gonna like push my wife into it. And as we were walking out, she brought it up. She was like, maybe I want to do that. I said, absolutely. So and then we got involved with the confirmation program, and one of the other new teachers was we were this roughly, I think we were close in age, but she had lost a baby too. And so my wife found someone who had been through exactly what she had been through, and so knew.
That was her time to share in the healing process, and I would imagine that there were times where you guys probably had to isolate yourself, and you probably had family flocking to somehow support you. And sometimes it's not necessarily what your family's going to say. Sometimes it's just them being there. But it's amazing to hear how profound that is, that it brought you back, the experience. And basically it's like saying Lauren brought you back to church, brought you back to your faith, allowed you to look to serve during that healing process. And then eventually, when was it that you said, that you felt like, we should try again, when Sarah came along?
Oh, it was, well, I want to say we found out in October. So it was a few months, I remember, I mean, we'd go and spend time at down my brother's house in San Clemente. You know, there was, and then I remember we went on a road trip, my wife and I. I think we went up to San Luis Obispo, and then we kind of cut across the roads over, went to Vegas, and then came home. But just um, that healing of a road trip to get out um, was huge for us. Um, when we went to the mission in San Luis Obispo, and there was a picture of Mary and Jesus, and it just reminded me of that parent-child relationship, and it was like oh. And um, so it was, yeah, we found out, and again, I did not get these dates out, but my wife will probably kill me for not knowing the dates. Um, but we found out that we were pregnant again in the fall. Um, and it was almost from the get-go, it was the same conditions as with Lauren. And so we had changed doctors. We were down at Saddleback in Lake Lake Forest. Um, so we would travel down there, and an amazing team. They were um, the person we were with at UCI was suggesting abortion. You're like, why are you doing this again? Um, and he did the same thing with our friend when she wanted her next pregnancy. So we were like, you know what, we're going to find someone who's more in line with our beliefs. And we went down to Saddleback, and they were just amazing. So my wife was traveling in that I want to say it was October, November, and she was in Denver for work. Um, and I have a cousin who moved out there, so I think they had dinner and stuff. And but all of a sudden she had to go to the hospital, and so it was thank God that my cousin was there with her, because she was able to be with her. Um, and it was the same. That's what I said. We found out the same conditions. So she came home. They put her on immediate bed rest. And sometimes you think, oh, that'd be awesome. I could lay around all day, but it turns into a prison. We had a nice little den in the back of the house at the time. So had a fireplace. We had two incredible couches that were really comfortable. And but she just got, it's when you can't do anything. It's kind of like now. We kind of know what it's like now.
With when it comes to bed rest and pregnancy, it does remind me of a neighbor that had experienced that as well, who ended up not being able to have children. And even though we're not close to her, you can really empathize with them, because you feel like this is the sacrifice that I have to make, but you feel so restricted, and you start questioning, is this really in the cards, yes or no? But I would assume if Sarah's 18 now, um and she's a mature 18, I'm sure that um sharing that story with them, especially having her, I can see how you guys would see her as such a blessing, in terms of her showing that there's hope, and there's so much reward to parenting.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was a long journey. We were, with when she was pregnant with Sarah, we were doing like weekly visits down. They wanted to see her weekly, um, and and the we were in. We went in April, and I think my wife said, "This is it. We're going to come home with a baby. I know this is it." So we went in, and they were monitoring her, and they were trying to induce labor. And then they have those monitors where they can tell the heart rate of the mom and the baby. And every time she'd have like a strong contraction, the heart rate would go down the baby, like a lot. And I remember the doctor walked in, he looked at it, and he goes, I have no tolerance for this. We're going to go do a C-section right now. So it was scary. Um, they whisked her off, and they got me all in the garb. Um, And I remember just, seeing there, it's like, at that point for me, um, I've got to be there for my wife. So I don't have time to worry about me. So I can kind of, be able to shut that off. Um, and I remember walking in, and they got she's got they got that curtain that's over their head, and I wasn't going to look at her belly. I wasn't, I had a friend who actually videotaped his wife's C-section, but he's a little strange. Um, they both used to watch the Operation channel while they had dinner together. So, um, but I walk around the corner and not really expecting. I have no idea what I'm walking into, and she goes, "Hi, honey." It's kind of like when you see the magician with the girl in the box and the head's out one end. So, and I'm sitting there with her, I remember she started kind of shaking, like she couldn't control. So whatever, maybe a reaction to the epidural or something, or I'm not sure. But and all of a sudden she goes, oh, I'm like, what? What? She goes, I just felt a weight lifted off. And then all of a sudden we just hear the cry. And it was a very what we were hoping for, but you didn't want to hope too hard, Um, and she was preemie. She was in the ICU for like 3.5 weeks. And so my wife's C-section incision got infected, so she had to stay in the hospital longer. But she was perfectly fine with that because that way she could spend all the time she could with Sarah in the ICU. So she was always in the ICU. So I would go to work, I'd come and I'd be there, and I would read. They tell you to do different things for the parents. So I would read her the Dr. Seuss book Eres tu mi mama, because my wife's from Uruguay, so her parents speak Spanish. Her mom, we could talk, but she was limited English. So I would read that in my pseudo accent, which made everybody and all the other parents laugh. So, um, but yeah, no, and she's she was preemie, and when I could hold her in one hand when she was first born. She was that small. And it's funny, you forget now that you're grown up, how small they were. Um, and you're very gracious calling her a mature 18-year-old. So I'm not quite sure.
I think what it tells me is it, it it tells me that you're almost feeling like you're redeemed, and there's somewhat of a weight taken off your shoulders after 2 or 3 weeks of saying, can we take her home?
Mm-hmm.
Where you feel sure, as opposed to having your expectations in one place, and then being um disheartened leaving the hospital original with Lauren. So what that scenario reminds me of, especially being in the room, for some reason the second time around um was just so much more vivid to me when my son Kai was born.
Uh-huh.
I think that was when I was like, man, thank God I'm a man, because I would never be able to tolerate the the trauma that women deal with and endure, when it comes to childbirth. But what a gift that is to to really say that, hey, I'm a dad, and
Mm-hmm.
and here it is. But you clearly did not want to stop there. How did you go from, hey, let's enjoy this, to what do we what made you look into adoption and that journey?
How can we, yes, how can we really challenge ourselves? Um, and one thing I was just thinking about too, as I was talking about Sarah's birth, I forgot to mention Lauren's birthday is June 13th, and that's the feast day of San Antonio.
Amazing.
Yeah. Our church. So that was like, and I don't know if we realized. I'm not sure how long it took for me to realize that, but I'm sure my wife knew it right away. So after Sarah was born, I came from a very big family. I've got um, three brothers, two sisters. The oldest and youngest are girls. The middle are all boys. Um, and I have over 30 first cousins. So, and we were, so uh, my dad, it's funny, my dad, it's not that it's planned, but my dad's mom was found on the doorstep of an orphanage.
Mm.
So someone left her there in LA, and my dad still has the note that was left with her. Um, and so his family, a little smaller, he only had one brother who he lost, but I have four cousins. Um, and my mom, she had their group of five, but they her siblings had like, 5 to 7 kids. That's why I guess all these cousins, and we get together because everybody was local, so we get together for all the holidays. So, my wife she's from Uruguay. She only has I think her mom's sister was here, and that was it. So she has a very small family. Walks into my group, and you're walking into a party. Um, I remember one Christmas, my cousin's other grandmother, she got on the piano. We were just doing, Christmas songs, and she's just playing away. It was just amazing. So my wife very much wanted to have a large family. And I really didn't have any, really hadn't thought that through, that was kind of like, I'll take whatever comes. Um,
Same here.
and yeah, I want to have 3 kids and, but, I might plan having my dogs more out than I plan having my kids. Um, so after Sarah, we kept trying, and my wife kept having miscarriages, and it was always right at the 7-week mark. So it was kind of like, she knew the time, and we were just kind of waiting. And what was really hard about that time is she would still have all the labor pains. So she would still go through just the pain and all that. And we tried everything, we were going to the specialists and all that. She was doing the injections. And then it was I think it was 11 miscarriages she had after Sarah. And she finally just said, honey, she says, I can't do this anymore. And I said, okay, we don't have to. That's okay. We don't have to. And, that was for her, it shows the desire she had to have a large family to keep putting herself through that. And so that was a big step for her. And I imagine just a ginormous letdown for her to have to say, you know what, I can't do it. And so we kind of, just progressed. And then it was funny. We would have different people who didn't know each other say, have you guys ever thought about adoption? You guys should do adoption. So I had like a sister-in-law mentioned it to me. We had, now see if you can follow this one. So Sarah, when she was little, we would drop her off at Hepatha, the daycare. And the lady who worked, one of the ladies who worked in the daycare was see if I can remember. She was the mom of Marianne's brother's wife's friend. Just this, just totally twisted. But she said, have you guys ever thought about it? And so then kind of Marianne was like, maybe we should check it out. We said, okay, let's go. And we're thinking about it international. She's from Uruguay. Maybe we can do international. I always was like, I'd like to do domestic just because there's plenty of kids here I know who need a home. And so we went to French Church off of Yorba Linda off of Ridgefield, I think. Ridgefield and Yorba Linda. They were having international adoption fair, and they had I forget. There's that Christian singer. It wasn't him, but his wife and daughter were there, speaking. And we got there, and you really don't know. You don't know really what you're doing or what to expect or anything.
It's kind of hard to say, hey, I'm just looking.
Yeah. So we walked in, and the first booth we came to was Olive Crest, and they're a local foster adoption. They do a lot of things, but one of the things that they also do is they do foster to adopt.
Yes, very well known.
Yeah. I was just kind of looking at their website again, and they have a lot of different services that they do for kids who are in foster care. Um, so great organization, and then we went to the other ones around, and we heard the talks and all that, and then we kind of found out how expensive international adoption is. I mean, it depends where you go, and it can be a lot of money. So we said, well, let's try Olive Crest, and we went and talked to them, and we were like, okay, and they're Christian, so we like that, and they were local to us. It seems most of those services are down in like 4th Street area in Tustin and Orange, most of the buildings down there. But and it took us, so you have a year. I think when you first start your application, you have a year to kind of finish the application process, and that involves getting your house ready and all that, and safe and all that. And it took us almost a year to do everything, because we in the back of the house there was a big room, and so when we first moved here, we had on the hall that goes down the house, we put a wall on the right side and made like an office space right there. So to accommodate our influx of kids, we took down that wall and put a wall on the other side of the hall, so we had 2 bigger bedrooms, and we did that. You got to get all the you have to get rid of your little junk pile on the side of the house that you've got. Everybody seems to have. They said we had to get the door locks and all that safety stuff.
Talk about a real honey-do list. I don't think for someone that's very oblivious to the adoption process, that even just that is, it's so new to me to think that, I understand that there could be a screening process and making sure that they're in a comfortable living accommodation and so on, which is kind of what we do with international students with our our agency, but that is on a whole different level. But with it being were you initially looking at one?
So we because Sarah was still young. She was 5, I think, when we first started. And so we were looking at a baby. We wanted a baby, and of course, everybody wants a baby. So, and then we said, well, we're open to siblings. And so they did. They said, well, they have a thing, they call it respite. So when the foster family is going on a trip or something, they will sometimes, like, they just kind of want to get away, they'll find a place for the kids to stay for a week while they're gone, or maybe they're going somewhere where the kid can't go because it's out of state,
especially someone in your situation where you're somewhat preparing and you want to have a chance to oversee in a short period of time.
Yeah, it kind of gives you. So by that point, we're already, because you have to already be approved. So we've done everything at that point. They said we had more child safety locked doors than anybody else they'd seen before. So yeah, it's time you it's a safe way to really get your feet wet and kind of get a feel for, okay, what's it involve. And so we had a little boy for a week, and then he went back to his foster family, and then it wasn't too. Again, if you want details, you got to talk to my wife. She knows all the dates. But they had one where there were 3 siblings, and the foster family was taking the older one with them vacation, but they're looking for a placement for the younger 2. So we said, okay, yeah, we'll do it, and it was just for a week, I think, too. So I said, okay. And so they came, and I remember I came home from work, and um, you walk in, and so they're a little older. So these ones, they talked. They had, but they immediately go, "Hi, Dad." You're like, well, wait a minute. I didn't tell you to call me Dad yet. So it's a little different, but they were very open. Very. Um, we had fun. Uh, my wife just fell in love, but it was, they weren't, they already had a placement, so they weren't looking for a place for them. So they went home. Um, and so we kind of waited. And then a little bit later, uh, we got a call and they said, hey, those two siblings that were there, well, them and their sister are going to go on the adoption track. Are you guys interested? And so I always tell people, I say, we wanted a baby. We're open to siblings, so just be careful what you when you crack the door.
I can imagine you looking at Marianne like they're available.
Well, it was, you know what? I was kind of, it's the leading up to choosing to be a foster adoptive family. Um, the hardest thing, I think, and maybe the most cognizant thing that we ever did was say yes. So it's making that commitment. That's the hardest. You say, okay, you can think about it and talk about it and okay, whatever. But when you say, yeah, I'm going to do this, then that's the hardest decision. And to me, that was the one that is that pivotal moment that I remember the most because it changed everything. Um, so yeah, when they said that, we were like, because we both loved them, but they were like, oh, we're not gonna. And Sarah got along with them. And we said, well, we need, we're really worried because the older sister was like 10 months uh, younger than Sarah. So it was close age range, and they always kind of warn you about those. It could be, just the who's top dog could kind of create some issues. So we want to say, well, we want to kind of see how they get along. So they came. I don't know if it was for a week or a weekend for that first time, and um, the girl walked in, and her and Sarah just ran off like they were best friends. I mean, just immediate. They just like, okay,
And there's your
and so
answer.
oh yeah, so we said, well, we can't say no now, but but it was, yeah, it was like, okay, so we're not, so that part we're we know is not, at least at this point, a major problem. So we said okay, and it was on Labor Day of let's see, Sarah was 6, so it was 2008 that they moved in with us. So we went from one child to 4 on a weekend. And I remember that the week before that, we had a Trailblazer. So my wife went out, traded in for a Honda Odyssey because our car wasn't big enough for everybody. So we needed the Odyssey.
But just that, just even the logistics of it. And then I can imagine you guys just trying to get your arms around, wow, this is a little bit more than I had thought. But like you said, you said yes. You've agreed and committed to it, and knowing that you spent time with the kids, you already knew, you know, you almost claim ownership. Like, no, these are my kids. At that point,
it's yeah. I mean, it's I don't know. I'm trying to remember. It was just kind of like, okay, we're going to do this, and we're going to make it work. I mean, and Olive Crest does a really good job of going through extra prep classes. And but the thing that we've learned over the years is, well, at least for us, it did not prepare us for what the reality is. That you're not aware of the dynamics when you already have a kid of what's going on. Um, they were great playing and stuff, but so Sarah and the older daughter shared a room, and then the other two siblings, think they each had their own room. I can't remember now. I think they had their own room, but uh, everything was great till the day until bedtime came around because Sarah was not going to share story time. That was a major struggle. I mean, you want to talk tantrums. Um, Sarah was not going to share her grandparents. They were her grandparents. They were not their grandparents. She was little. I mean, it was, but it was. So yeah, it's amazing what uh, there's as a parent, foster adoptive parent. There's a lot that we go through, and I think what gets missed a lot is what if they have biological children, what they go through. Um, and so it was it's something that I think is understated and not appreciated on how hard it is or can be for a biological child.
I,
And maybe
I,
it's harder when they're younger because they
I,
have a hard. It's harder for them to kind of process.
yeah, I would say so. In fact, that I was always wondering how that was to accept um, not having all the attention, because she was 5 at the time. But Sarah's 18, Abby's 17, Emily 15, Jacob 14. Do you feel like
Mm-hmm.
there were a good share of times where you realized that bringing them together in faith helped keep the peace in the home?
Um, yeah, we had some good moments. Um, uh,
Because you realize you're outnumbered.
I remember I can and there's a couple of things I can. Oh, the first hold on. Okay, the first few months they were all over my wife. They all wanted her attention. It was mommy, 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 and they were all competing. Um, and within the first months we had actually asked and gotten some extra help. Um, we had someone come, I think, from Boys Town to try to kind of help manage what was going on. Um, but um, I remember the first time we went to church, it was kind of they were, so when they came to us, Sarah was 6, Abby 5, and then 3 and 2 for Emily and Jacob. And we went to church, and they just happened to pick us that Sunday to bring the gifts up, um, and the stuff. It's we bring the gifts up, and I'm I've kind of got Emily, and you give the gifts, and the priest in the altar service turn around and go back up. And I remember we're starting to walk back, and Emily kind of stops because she's 3, and she kind of stops, and she's like looking at like altar, going, what's going on here? What'd they just take? you know. Um, so we were always going to church with them. We went to a family camp, um, and which was great. We did a lot of family activities. They had kid activities, there's adult activities, crossover stuff. Just kind of fun time for a week. Um, and what was neat, and I think maybe they recognized it, is they created a new award, and they gave Sarah the Big Sister Award.
Amazing.
And it's just it was kind of that was great. So they knew. I mean, and I was. Let me think. That was 2008. So those first few years, I was still working at Dryers, um, and so yeah, we were still involved with the church and did a lot of things. So they knew that was part, um, and we always have tried to have meals together. So that was we start with prayer, and they know that, and we did bedtime with them, and so it's faith has been a big part of helping us kind of get through it.
I believe that that's really that's the glue that holds the family together. And I never I never um, neglect that the fact that it's our responsibility as fathers to be that leader in some way, somehow, some fashion. In my house, it was my mom that was the faith leader. Statistically, they say that if it's the father, that into adulthood, children will actually have um, 75% of children in adulthood will carry on that faith if the father is the faith leader in the home. So
Mm-hmm.
I like to play the statistics, but I would love to be a fly on the wall at Thanksgiving time with a family of six. I think that that's just that's such a joy. The chaos you appreciate. In going back to what you were saying about um, dismissal at mass, and allowing the kids to be dismissed. I've never considered that. If anything, I look at my son or my daughter at the time, and I would either give them a small hug or give my son, some knuckles or something like that. Like, just reiterating that I'm proud of them. But nevertheless, before we start to close down, Mike, for any couples that might be considering adoption, um,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think is some words of advice or wisdom that you could offer them, based on your experience and feeling how blessed you are to have the children that you have?
Um, Definitely has to be a team effort. And you need to, a challenge my wife and I had is we both had different parenting styles. And we've heard that from other couples. Um, and so it's, and we weren't great at it, but you got to come together and kind of work it out as far as what you're going to do, how you're going to handle situations. We did a lot of 1, 2, 3 magic video series where you count, you give them, one, that's two, that's three, and three, they're in timeout. But it's about being consistent, and it's about being, uh, you're, it's the fact, it's just the facts, ma'am. It's not, make it personal, but, and it's for adoption, we found out it is, you're not prepared for what it's actually going to be. Um, we had we had been working on things, and at one point we felt like the family was kind of meshing. We had things kind of under control, and then we got a call and found out that their half brother was in the system, and that, do you guys want to watch him? And we said, yeah, yeah. And he just fell in love with him. They were so happy, to have to meet him and to be with him. He was younger than Jacob by a couple of years, and so Jacob Halverson had a boy to play with. um, and But the system, they put him back with his mom about 2 years later, and that absolutely just destroyed us. And it completely just broke all those the healing that had happened and everything. Um, so it's a challenge, and it's um, I don't know if it's the greatest, but it's definitely uh, something that is going to be very tough on you and your marriage. So you've got to go into it with eyes open. I'm not going to say don't do it. Um, I can't see um, not having them. I forget that they're not my biological kids, because they're my kids. The worst thing you can say to any adoptive parent, which one's your real kid? Which one's your real kid? Come on. It's like, no, no, no. They're all of they're each one of them. The one thing that I am sad about is that I don't have those baby pictures of them like I have with Sarah. You don't have that time. Um, and it's not easy on them when they're in foster care. Not, they don't come all the time from great family situations. Um, if they don't get that love when they're younger, that's true. I mean, it really makes it hard on them, and they don't have great foster placements all the time. We were their 11th placement, and Jacob was only two. No, Jacob was, yeah, he was two, and so he'd been in 11 placements before us, or 10 placements before us. Um, and that does damage because then they're like, I'm not going to attach to you guys. I'm going to be out of here again sometime. Why should I get close to you guys? So, um, but it's the best, kids, it's a blessing. It's great to see them grow up. It's great to see them progress. Um, Sarah's in college now, and she wants to be a lawyer, which is like, oh my gosh, where'd that come from? I was an ice cream guy. My wife was an avocado lady. So, um, Abby is just an amazing artist. She's got just this natural gift, and now she's taking it in school, and it's just blowing up. Incredible. Um, Emily already knows that she wants to be in the Air Force. So that at the school there's a junior ROTC program. So, and she had leadership position her first year, and just blossomed. She was incredible. So she loves that. And so right now that might change, but right now it's important to her. And then our youngest, he's got his own YouTube channel. He does Rubik's Cube. Um, he plays violin, and he loves that. He's incredible. And he does, he skateboards. He loves to skateboard and play basketball. So um, he kind of does a lot of different things. But so it's you know, life would be different, but I can't see it without them. So it's hard, but I think sometimes it's those experiences that challenge us the most that are the most rewarding. Um, Being with this has really helped me to love. What's it mean to love your spouse? Um, Sometimes it seems, some people seem so easy just to get offended and walk away. But it's like, no, no, I made a commitment. Whatever we do. Um,
And that's really what that covenant is when we engage in holy matrimony. And a lot of times as couples we forget to look at that. But in looking at the whole journey from from you know um, being married in '99 and then experiencing the hardships that you did with Lauren, having Sarah, and then still having very challenging. I mean, 11 miscarriages is that's a lot of ups and downs, and or eventually realizing that maybe this isn't where we're supposed to go. But
mhm.
what it reminds me of, Mike, is it's Job 1:21, where it says the Lord gives and takes away. I mean, because I'm envisioning your family picture, and to me, with God's grace, anything's possible. And like you said, you take the good and the bad, and understand that you guys don't give up. Really, that if anything, all those challenges brought you closer together. Your relationship is very unique. I can imagine your relationship with Jacob's very unique because it's basically man to man. You're teaching him how to be a man. You're teaching Sarah how to you know take on the leadership as the eldest. And I mean, just like how you just went through each of their what makes them each special. They are your kids. And I always think about the way that I think our Father looks at us, um, that we are all his children of God. And so I look at it the same way. But it's so refreshing to be in a position where you can, you know, point to your family and say, "This is my family." And I think that that's truly a gift. If anything, um, what I'm hoping that our audience hears from what you shared about the journey of adoption is that it is a commitment, it is sacrifice.
Hmm.
But I think any parent would say, however that journey occurs, it's so rewarding, it's so worth it. And you just have to allow God to mold it together, because it is through those hardships is where we truly grow in faith and realize that we have to rely on him, and that it's not on only dad's shoulders, it's not only mom's shoulders, but it's something that we're a part of, in terms of being a family of God. And that's what the church, that's the beauty of the church, and that's the beauty of Catholicism, is you can insert that where there are needs. And
Hmm.
it's such a gift to be able to do that. And so, like, you may not look at your work in youth ministry as it's I'm just doing what I think I'm called to do, but I can imagine a lot of those children and where they've gone, and how you've helped shape their life the way that you've shaped the lives of Sarah, Abby, Emily, and Jacob. So it's truly a blessing. I think when I'm allowed to, um, when this episode happens to release in a few weeks, I would be happy to say that I would be one of the first ones to say happy birthday to you, since it is being
Oh,
released on your
I know.
birthday.
I know. I saw that. Hey, thank you.
It's amazing how things work out.
I
But
saw that. I was like, hey, that's great. Cool.
but
Well, very.
I think that a lot of people will really appreciate that journey, and I think they can draw a lot of inspiration from it. But Mike, thank you for being on. And as I close the show, um, just remember, keep God first, and never doubt His plan for each of us. But this podcast episode has ended. Go now in peace to love and serve the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Amen.